Welcome to the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. My name is Dave Deacon. It is episode 108, and we want to thank you for making your way back yet another time. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button on your streaming service so you will be one of the very first people to know when the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast drops every other week. Usually every other week, sometimes a little bit longer. We are coming to you on June 17th, 2022 from Dr. Jason Warren's research lab on the agronomy farm at Oklahoma State University. And yes, it has been a minute or two since our last chat because this is kind of a busy time of year for Dr. Josh Lofton, Dr. Jason Warren, and Dr. Brian Ernell. They've been on the road harvesting, planting, tending to research areas, and speaking in person to audiences on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. But we were able to get together to chat about what is happening across the Southern Great Plains right now. And we're going to jump in with both feet into this edition with a harvest update here in just a second or two. But if you'd like to ask the group a question, then hop on over to reddirtagronomy.com and leave a question there, or send an email directly podcast@reddirtagronomy.com, and we will be happy to discuss your question on the next podcast. Also, there are some opportunities for on-farm research conducted by the doctors, and they will talk about them towards the end of the podcast, and you can also find that information on our website as well. So without further ado, let's start with a wheat harvest update with Dr. Brian Ernell. You are listening to the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. So, Brian, you've been in the field, you've been across the state, you've been looking at wheat harvest. You actually let me become a researcher for a day. Actually, yeah. It was about 20 minutes. You were like, okay, Dave, really?
Well, you didn't screw anything up in 20 minutes, so I thought we were getting on that point where is that fine edge of right. Too far.
Something's about to happen, so I'm going to go ahead and pull Dave. Yeah. You did well. But what have you been seeing in your wheat plots that you've been harvesting?
Okay, so in our wheat plots, I'll say we've been from Chickasha to Lamont cutting wheat. We're about to finish around Stillwater today and move up towards the Kansas line. And we'll be up in Kansas either Saturday or on the Kansas line either Saturday or Monday morning. With the stuff I've been cutting and in has been okay. Mm-hmm. I'll put it that way. I know there's a lot worse out there. It's been okay. Chickasha, depending on where in the field we were in that 30 to 50 bushel range. Test weight was low down there. Mm-hmm. We're probably running high 50, so 57, 58 test weight. Better than, given the year, we had no clue what we're going to get into. Moving into the Perkins plots, Perkins, again, we were in that mid-50 range, which for Perkins is a sandy soil off the river, but it is also multiple years, so it's older no-till ground. Really good. Still a little bit smaller berries. The surprise was Lamont and Lahoma yesterday. Lamont was an on-farm study. It was rough ground. That's why we went on it. It was a PNK study. It had been farmed pretty hard. It was second-year no-till. Its yields were 20 and 30 bushel, which was more what I expected. But when we moved down to Lahoma, now Lahoma's variety trial, it had been on fallow ground, which was probably a big win for it.
Right.
We were running in pretty consistently 60 bushel range, test weights in the 59 to 61 across varieties. A big varietal response. We're definitely going to see some shakeout and some not on that. And so good test weight. From what I've been hearing on social media and these guys and what I've been talking to the co-ops, we've got a pocket in the state where the yields have been good. Talked to somebody from Hydro. They were cutting 45 bushel dry land. And so, again, that was probably 15, 20-year no-till in a wheat cotton rotation.
Right.
And so there's been decent wheat, and there's also been really, really bad wheat. So we go Fairview, send some reports. You were up in Fairview yourself. Right. Not necessarily a lot of home runs up in some of that Cheyenne Valley region. A lot of proteins. The co-ops are definitely getting record proteins. I've been seeing 15, 16, 17% proteins coming in. The surprise is that when we're seeing the reports of the high protein, it's been followed with a good test weight, which is something you don't always get. Yeah. Usually that high pro will come with a shrunken berry, so you're looking at a 16% with 52 test weight, and they're getting 62 test weight with 17% protein. So we're liable to have in some pockets some really good quality wheat, just not a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was told this morning that they were getting this particular co-op was getting a premium, and then now they're going to drop it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they told them whatever kind of story about how now they're going to have to buy low protein wheat. I'm like, well, they're not going to give a damn premium for low protein wheat, but I mean that's pretty high protein, and so I guess the bright side is the quality's good.
Yep.
And like you say, that he was also saying his test weight's running 60.
Yeah.
And this was in pretty drought stricken. This is probably 10, 15 bushel wheat.
That moisture we got saved the berry. It didn't save the yield necessarily. It probably got us a couple bushels because it helped the berries form and it saved some of that formation.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you that some of those last rains probably got us from a 51 to a 60 just because you had some soil moisture to start and finish fill.
Yeah.
And that in itself, I mean, that's going to gain a couple percent of yield on that. So I think that was a big win. And the proteins are going to come from the fact that we used no nitrogen during the drought, and so it was there for uptake to finish.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, and I know that you're still kind of early into the harvest, and you haven't run all the numbers on your different treatments and all of that, but just riding in the combine, watching the numbers come in, are you seeing anything, any variations within the different treatments that you do out there?
Well, so what we have this year, I haven't gotten to my final sulfur location. Sulfur wasn't a big deal for me this year on any of the ground, which I wouldn't expect in the dry. I had a lot really, really late nitrogen shots, so I was doing a lot of nitrogen mid to late March as how late can we wait? Well, it was too late. When the last rain was March 10th and we applied March 20th and it doesn't rain for 90 days or plus, that it didn't pan out too well. Really nice proteins in those plots and not that big of a loss. We did recover more than we thought we would. Pre-plants held out pretty good this year. Early January applications in our more drought-prone environments. The pre-plant it took a pretty big hit due to drought and more disease. Those pre-plants, I can see pockets, and I've had it tested. So we have more barley yellow dwarf where we had pre-plant nitrogen. Yeah. We have it's odd in the green hammer and some of the other stuff. We're seeing more wheat streak, more high plains in the stuff that had pre-plant. And so there's this mixed bag of the heavier pre-plant. We got more growth. It had a nice fall to get going, and then it just kind of ran out because it used too much. And so those applications that came in that December through February time frame, more so in the February, where it could get some moisture on, were pretty successful. Waiting to that jointing point was a failure this year, but we didn't have rain before jointing or a long time after.
Well, so if those hold out, you've talked a lot of circuits in the last couple of years of you can wait for those right conditions, and we never really had great conditions to apply. So what do you take if those results hold out true? What do you take from this year to where you saw that there was a too late, but you wouldn't have known there was a too late until you got to that point, and it was already too late. So what do you take from this year on that?
Well, here's one of the things that you have to settle in and decide: how much are you going to take from the 21-22 season and apply it going forward? Is this one of those outliers, or is this the future? And so if it's an outlier, then I just take it as some life lessons that the hollow stem, the jointing timing is too late. The answer is in a spring drought, jointing is too late. The previous 8 years, it's been perfect. So are we now? Now we're 1-9, or we're 8-1 for the late application. Do we say that this trend is going to hold and we're going to have no rain through March, April, and May? Or March and April at least. If that's the case, then I need my fertilizer on in February. But if you look at it, and so I've talked to some farmers and the guys that ran this and pulled, This is a story. So we had a lot of enrich strips up in an area that were hit really, really hard. And so the enrich strips would have been applied in December. They would have been 40 to 50 pounds of nitrogen. Fields did not get top dressed. Fields zeroed out at 6 bushel or so, or 5, but whatever the point it is zero. Low, right? Low yield.
Yeah, it's higher
The
than
enrich
normal.
strips were worse. So that 60 pounds applied in December for the enrich basically caused so much drought stress that it was 0-0 when everything else was just 3 or 4 bushels. So it was more dead than the rest of the field.
So are you kind of on the point that, you know, if you don't have the conditions around jointing, it's almost better to forego nitrogen than it is to, I mean, if you don't have the rain, then, I mean, what's the point of the nitrogen? And we did get rain late, but...
I want to get into the numbers and start seeing how it shook out for us. The ones that were really bad, they applied at jointing, really got no rain, probably didn't lose a ton because of the methods they used and the timing. And they didn't leach it. And guess what? They came in and they've got corn or sorghum in that ground right now. So how much of a loss do we have going in on that? Is that top dress nitrogen just going to be utilized by the summer crop? I would, based upon the look of those crops in the fields that I've seen, I think they're okay with it. It's the roughest point is that middle ground, like the wheat that we're cutting, that's the 30 bushel range that could have been 45, but you're getting 35. It's a tough year, so I'm still at the point is like I don't know how much I'm going to completely change up any significant recommendation. I'm going to use this as a learning, and I'm going to dig into the data, and I'll go through it and I'll look at all my data in the next couple of weeks. We'll hopefully be off the combine by Tuesday, and I'll do a summary blog on just the timing stuff, just talking about what we observed.
I guess from a summer crop perspective, based on that you just said, you know, some zeroed out wheat that applied nitrogen late, and so they're able to access it on, you know, milo or corn or cotton or whatever they ended up going with. How much of that, based on the rain we've had since they planted, how much can you count on that? And are you thinking that in-season application is going to be a necessary thing?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and Dave and I talked the other day, and this kind of came up, is that we had, what was our highest areas, like 10 inches or somewhere? I mean, we got in the range of 6 to 10 inches in a few locations, right?
Yeah, we've had.
Well, it was not a slow 2-month 10 inches. What were the terms we were using? Turd floater or toad strangler?
Yeah,
They came, so we had a significant amount of surface flow, right? And so we're still not probably having a lot of leaching, so I'm not expecting a lot of losses. In fact, what I'm expecting is kind of going back to Dr. Yealing, and we were talking with her, is that we got nitrogen in the system. Now we have moisture because we had no moisture. We had carbon. Now we have some extra nitrogen in the system. We probably kicked that organic mineralization cycle up real nicely with that moisture and the temperature. And so we're probably turning on the nitrogen cycle, releasing it. I would say that based upon the calls I had the last 2 weeks, as soon as it started raining, that there's a lot of side dress going on in sorghum. Yeah. I was getting like a call a week.
Just looking at 60-day mesonet,
I don't want to look at that.
You're looking at 7 to 20 inches in the last 2 months. So you can have a little bit of surface flow, 20 inches, but you're still going to have a bit of leaching.
You're going to have leaching in your deep sands. I would still say some of these silt loams out here with the rainfall we had, I don't know. We were so dry. I mean, in Altus, so Altus probably had 10 inches, right? In my kids were down there yesterday trying to pull.
They had 9.
9 inches. They were down there yesterday trying to pull deep cores in the long-term cotton study, which is a bedded field. It's a bedded flat field that does not drain well. They could not get more than 12 inches in the ground with a 100-horse tractor on a 3-point pro.
That soil down there, even like Kevin Wagner, he's got a study where he's actually monitoring the runoff at that station. And he says just a small rain has been giving him runoff, and these big ones, I mean. And that Hollister and the Tillman clay loams, they're pretty damn tight. And those tight soils, they can hold so much water, but it takes a lot of gentle rains, those big rains. And, a silt loam all the way down to the middle of the earth can take a big rain, but those clay loams, I don't care what you do, they're just not going to take it. And so they can be dry even after heavy rain's what I'm getting at.
I'm concerned with, that's in some of our cotton ground that maybe is laser graded or it's got some nice fall to it. I'm concerned with some of this corn and milo ground that's maybe going to have a little mosaic because they're a little rougher ground. They got pools and pockets and stuff like that to where, we had plots that had water on them for 7 days after a rain just because it's not graded properly for it to drain off. So
no question, we're going to have denitrification, and so those low areas, I'm going to say it's denitrification because we had water standing. So denitrification is when the soil goes anaerobic, meaning it's without oxygen for a period of what we hit it after about 3 or 4 days. We start the process, but 7 days it really goes strong. So 7 days without oxygen, the microbes need oxygen, so they strip it from nitrate, NO3. And then that gasses it off. So a lot of losses there. Backside of terrace is usually that. And the sandier ground that is able to drain, it probably pushed through. But I'm going to tell you what, if it's not sloping ground, if it's fairly flat ground that's well drained, we push down. Last week we've been pulling it right back up with evapotranspiration.
Well, and we've been seeing on our summer stuff that now still not a great time to judge that because we still got some remnants of ponded water and stuff like that to where our crops are still a little yellow. But I'm not 100% convinced they're nitrogen as well as that it's just low root development because they were underwater for so long.
The producer I was out there with out in Major County, you could really see a difference between the in the field. Part of it he was getting 20 bushels, and then down in the lower spots where the water pooled a little bit earlier, he was getting 50 bushels. It just across of a 5-acre area difference right there. So that transforms over to the summer crops and kind of like what Josh was saying. Well, are there any benefits from that rain that we got for the summer crops, or are we past that magic window for that?
Hell yeah.
I think we're doing okay, and I will temper my excitement for good moisture because there's still there's some places that look really dry on the surface, and if I were to plant today, I would be very concerned. But if you get down 2 inches, there's still really, really good moisture on some of these soils, that especially the ones that were around us around here that got those 20 inches of rain and stuff like that. There's still some deeper moisture.
Oh, there's tons. Before these rains, because I go around and I push rods in the ground. I got this little, what is it, a 1/4-inch rod with a little ball on it, and I shove it in the ground. And before the rains, I couldn't do it. But now, most of the soils I deal with are silt loam surfaces with clay loam subsoils, and those are pretty well built to take good water if they got residue and all that. And before the rain, you couldn't do shit. Pardon my French, to shove it in the ground. But now you can. And then the question is whether or not you can get a deep root before the Mother Nature dries it out at the surface. But we talk about like the stuff down in Altus. That's a tough beast down there, because the subsoil's so heavy, and the rains were so freaking hard.
Yeah.
But a lot of the I did a lot of good. Yeah, I've got irrigation of the Panhandle, and we had a 3-inch rain come with probably 1/2 inch of pea-size hail. And before that, because we were having a lot of well problems, and just one thing after the other, and we couldn't get the water moving, and I could push that rod 12 to 18 inches, and that's it. Wow. And then it killed my cotton, almost killed my corn, killed a bunch of neighbors' corn, flipped over freaking. So it was kind of a disastrous rainstorm. But afterwards, you could push a rod 6 feet deep.
Wow.
Just like lickety split.
Yeah.
And so now we can grow corn, but so it's it was a blessing in that regard, because without that, I don't think we would have grown. I think we would have irrigated corn, and I think it would have died.
So,
but now we can make some grain.
So is it the soil type that's creating such a variability with just I say just because in the Panhandle it's a big deal if you get a 2-inch rain, but they had X amount of rain over a week time, and they were able to put a rod in the ground 6 feet. Is it the soil, or is it just the amount of rain that they got?
Well, it's a combination. So, like I was talking, I had lunch with a neighbor, and he had, golly, he lost a lot of corn, flipped over pivots, and he showed me pictures where his strip till had good residue off 250 bushel corn the prior year, and the rain hit his place so hard it just washed it away. Wow. And I've got videos. There was rivers and creeks out there that I've never seen run.
Yeah.
And they were bank to bank. I mean, there were places that, well, that farm, and it's Eva on the Mesonet, I left it, and 45 minutes later I get to the Guyman, and there was 1.5 inches of rain.
Yeah.
And then 45 minutes after that, there was another 1.5 inches. And that was on the tip of the storm. And then where he was, it was 5 to 7 inches with like up to 1 inch of pea-sized hail. It just freaking, and it's 80. I think the Mesonet registered like an 88 mile an hour wind. Jeez. So when that kind of water hits the ground, we were blessed because I think we were on the edge of it based on the damage we had. And we have very heavy wheat straw residue. And, last year we had the same kind of situation, and a lot of that residue washed off with a heavy 3-inch rain. This year, ours didn't so much wash off, but a lot of the neighbors did. So, and so when it hits that hard, even if you got good residue and all these things that you're working on to get it in the ground, it'll still run off. And we were just, I say fortunate. We lost a freaking graduate student's master's thesis in the cotton, but it went in the ground. And anyway.
So if you look at the Altus situation, so Altus is a little bit heavier, but it's a tilled ground and it's bedded. In fact, they hipped up the beds to have enough moisture to put seed in. So we were talking about when we went out there right after planting, seed wasn't up yet, out to fertilize. We're talking this is drip irrigated, but we're bedded, and the beds are probably 15 inches tall. Because they hip to get moisture. They had 1 inch of rain, so you throw it up to try to get some moisture on the bed so you can plant into a little bit more moisture. Yeah. They went down there, and that same day they got 5 or 6 inches. Like that night after they fertilized, 5 or 6 inches. We got pictures, and they were just down there yesterday, and the beds are now 4 inches tall.
Yeah.
And so everything just kind of settled out, all that stuff. And so heavily tilled, basically what you'd say is furrowed cotton on drip, but so it has everything going against it for water infiltration at that point. Heavy rain because it just pounded.
Blowing now? Because that's another thing that happened up there on Monday. I don't know how freaking hard the wind was blowing, but these guys, it's mostly all no-till and its ground was covered. But when the residue washes away,
it should.
I saw guys out there. I don't even know exactly what they were running, but they were in row crop ground, like corn ground, running tillage to keep the wind from blowing through it.
I'm only imagining, and I haven't been down there. I hadn't asked the crew yet. They're doing Bermuda grass harvest this morning. I'm imagining they're running the sand fighters or chicken pickers, whatever you want to call it. They're doing something to keep it because that cotton's still small enough where if that wind picks those particulates up, it's going to electrostatic or it's going to rip it.
Cotton. It's kind of fun when it gets out of the ground, but golly, to get that crap out of the ground is brutal.
Well, Dave, the reason why I was going and I was tempered with my excitement because of the rain, we'll go back to that, is
Josh is
tempered. We're looking at some of our crops, and they're progressing maturity-wise a lot faster than they should be right now. We're looking at soybeans that are 3 trifoliates, 4 trifoliates that are already flowering. So the likelihood of us like lapping rows is probably pretty low. We got some milo that has like mid mid-stalk heads coming that aren't covered rows yet, and it's really too early for all this. But it's
I saw 2 fields of corn tasseling already.
Yeah. It's not the fact that we're too early per se. It's that our crops stayed in the ground and absorbed heat during this time to where the ground was so saturated that it wasn't growing all that much. And so if they absorb heat, or in soybeans case, the days on the calendar just tick away, then you're sitting in a situation to where you're going to have a much shorter crop. And that's what I'm expecting with our summer crops this year, which on the back end of some moisture, and we get some heat, and especially if we get some more moisture here in a couple of weeks, I think weed problems are going to be a major issue, because we're not going to have the benefit of the crop being lapped rows and covering and shading and stuff like that. So I think we're, if we get some good moisture coming up, hopefully into July, or even at the end of July, 1st of August, I feel like we're going to have some weed issues, because we got short crops that are already going through maturity. So that's why I'm happy that we got the rain, but we're seeing the effects a couple weeks out of the rain that we did get. So we're hopefully progressing, but Tuesday's the solstice, and that's where a lot of our summer crops kind of make that turn, is on that 21st. So it's one of those things that we have to look at, and it will potentially affect some of our summer crops this year, and we're already seeing the effects of that.
Well, and with the wheat pressure you were talking about, I mean, almost every wheat field I was in wasn't able to secure a strong enough canopy that weeds were an issue in almost every wheat field that I was in. So
I heard a lot of talk on double crop 2.5 weeks ago, and that has died down quite a bit, because one, they don't know what they're going to do with the weeds in their wheat crop. They don't feel like they can get effective plant, and now we've had such moisture deficit, the evapotranspiration rates and all that, especially if you have a lot of weeds in the canopy, them transpiring, then I think that number that we thought was going to be so incredibly high, I think will be a little bit, if not a lot, lower than what we were expecting. Maybe not planted, but successful might be lower. So
yeah, but I mean, that's a good thing about this heat and the dry spell we're having, is the combines are rolling.
Yeah. And
they got to get rolling, because if we were to start getting rain somewhere and they didn't get it out, the freaking weeds, because they're grain head high everywhere. Yeah. And those weeds are extremely hard to kill after harvest.
Yeah. Well, and especially they've been toughened because they've been under a canopy for so long, and then they make this giant shoot up. So, like we have like mare's tail and stuff like that's around some bulk wheat that we had. That, man, that's gonna be. I mean, you're gonna mow it. That's really the only way you're gonna really probably come around it. So
yeah, I'm gonna run steel through it. It's freaking aggravating. But anyway.
Oh, so Jason, you've been out in the Panhandle. You've been out in God's country where it's just you and God. Where?
Yeah.
But how have things, aside from the moisture that we've had, how are the crops that you've been working with in the pivots? Because you've been spending a lot of time getting the water flowing from the ground.
I don't know. I mean, it's been a pretty, and it's one of those things where I don't live out there. I go out there every damn week. I've been out there every week. I God knows how long, but it's brutal.
Yeah.
Those guys are fighting a fight, because it's seasonably hot, and they can take the heat. But when it's unseasonably hot like it is, and we've had hot Junes, and they're getting into their rainy season, and I'm hoping. I was talking to a guy at OU, and he's suggesting, we're in this La Nina or whatever, and it's real strong out there, or the effects are real strong out there. But then you had these storms pop up, and so we got this rain, of course, freaking hail, but the wind has been unrelenting, and at least most of everything in the Panhandle, Oklahoma is covered. But you drive down a road and you'll see dust blowing, and it's a dirt road. And the way wind erosion works is you get that dirt coming off that road, and it blows into a field, and those particles coming off the road hit the soil in the field, and then it starts moving, and then it's just and then you got a freaking dirt flying through a field. And so that and when it rains real hard like it did in this particular area, that smooths all that soil surface out, and it makes it worse. And that's why they've got to go out there with what's called a sand fighter or some sort of implement to roughen that soil up. And I haven't been out to Boise City, but it's got to be worse. But it's the unrelenting wind is just brutal. And you talk to guys, and they're like, "Oh my, I don't know." I mean, it's and the crop, but where they didn't get beat to the ground with hail, the crops look decent. And it's kind of funny to me. You see all this stuff on Twitter with these guys, talking about, heat stress and stuff. Oh, it's 95 degrees in Iowa. I'd show you some pictures of corn that's heat stress, and if we can come out and get some good weather during grain fill, it's still good corn. I mean, it's not 380 bushel corn or whatever, but it's still pretty damn good corn. I mean, in the afternoon, 105 degrees, 40-mile-an-hour wind, and 10% humidity, it looks like it's going to die.
Yeah.
But if we can get it to go and get a canopy on it, it'll be fair. But it's not going to be like last year. But last year it was hot. Last year, it seems to me, it was pretty hot in the spring, and then we were blessed with a fairly decent. Well, not as hot as it was this year.
It was cool, and then we got into July, and it just went.
But July was out there. That's why we had 300 bushel corn. Is July was moderate.
Yeah. It was that mid-July that
it was August and September.
Second
that was
2 weeks in July when the water turned off, and then it got hot in August and September.
Yeah, August.
But I remember vividly is that it was cool in April and May
because it was cold.
Yeah, I remember June being very cool last year.
My memory gets all confused. It's too hot to think.
But this reminds me a lot of 2 years ago where we got really, really wet in the April and May, and then it got extremely hot in June. That year we got cooled off in July and August, and we got some rain. So I mean, there's history on our side, but it's one of those things that each year is a new struggle, and this one, at least looking at the stuff coming out of Norman and the National Weather Center, that we could be in for a rough 4 weeks here coming up, because at least everything that they've been bringing out, the 1 week, the 3 week, and then the month forecast looks drier than normal. So next 4 weeks could be a struggle. So I guess that's that one thing is that, what do you tell folks that haven't planted coming out of wheat or looking to replant? I mean, is it time to pull back and look at next year's wheat crop, or forage? We can go into forage sorghum, stuff like that, but it's with the forecast and the soil conditions right now, it's kind of rough to recommend to go into anything right now.
If you get beans in the ground, would you go this week?
I'm planting beans tonight. I mean, because I've got them paid for. I've already prepped the ground and sprayed, and God knows how much I've spent to kill the damn weeds that were on there. I'm planting. And they, to some extent, and if I, because where I'm at, if you didn't plant them, then you're gonna fight weeds all damn summer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if you can get in the next 7 days, that would be okay.
But I know, like talking to my neighbors, the moisture's running out fast, so I'm gonna drop them in the earth deep. And I don't know if they're coming or not. I mean, it's like how deep can I plant soybeans? Because I know, I mean, it's hot, and I think soybeans can take the heat a little better than some, but I don't know.
So Josh, with all of that said, are we set up for any type of successful crop, regardless what it is? I mean, pick a crop, but I mean, you said the next 4 weeks.
Yeah,
we're going.
You mean like the summer crops that are already in?
Well, no, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think one of the biggest things is at least for the downstate regions. So the folks that have had these big rains have some deeper soil moisture and stuff like that. The biggest thing is the dew points have been high, humidity's been high. So while we've had winds, not as bad as the Panhandle, but we've had these constant 20+ mile an hour winds. It's been hot, but it's hot with 70 degree dew points, or some mornings have like 80% humidity.
This morning was moist. moist.
And like even yesterday, we couldn't start cutting until 10:30 because the dews that laid down the night before. So I think we're in a good spot, especially the stuff that's in the ground and coming out. I think we're in a good spot currently. If we can keep these dew points and the humidities, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah.
It's when that subcanopy gets really dry and the wind can get in there. So when the subcanopy gets kind of dry, the plants go drought stress, So the corn rolls up, the milo rolls up, the soybeans flip over. When you do that, you expose the subcanopy. So then the subcanopy gets dry and the subcanopy gets hot, and then that starts to really degrade on where your yield's coming from. So it's kind of a snowball effect. Is that once your top canopy gets dry and it shows that effects, then you just start working every leaf level down, and as it goes, it just continually dries out that plant. If we can keep it on the top canopy to where just the top canopy shows little signs of drought stress, but we still got those high dew points in the humidity in the canopy, I think we'll be okay. We can sustain some of this. The challenging thing will be next week when the lows aren't getting out of the mid 80s, like something for like soybean. It needs temperatures to drop down to the low 80s and the 70s to really be effective. That way it can get those early morning and late evening growth periods, because once it gets 100 degrees, soybeans ain't growing. So it needs that time on both ends, especially if it's starting to go through flowering. Corn's the same way. If we're starting to shed pollen degrades at really high temperatures. So if we start the day at really high temperatures, that can lead to, poor pollination. We can get some skippy corn ears and stuff like that. So we really need some good dew points, and we need those temperatures in the evenings, those nighttime temperatures, to stay low, and we'll be fine. Because we can sustain 90 and 100 degrees for several weeks as long as some of the other things play nice with us.
Are you hearing anything about insect pressure in any of the summer crops?
We've had some. I took a great picture yesterday. We had quite a bit of stink bugs coming out of eggs. I think that they're a little early, and they weren't our typical southern greens or browns that we have. So they might have even been sent a picture of Tom Royer yesterday. They might have even been a predatory stink bug. So might have been a helpful stink bug. So and so we've had that. We've had some issues of some people thinking they had thrips and sorghum. Some people ended up having springtails, and they weren't thrips; they were springtails. It's been back and forth. We're starting to see some damage of whirlworm in both corn and sorghum. You're not going to really do anything about that. It usually has very minimal effect on yield. So, but it's those people that are starting to get that head in those next 3 weeks that are going to get that head emerge. If you got really young whirlworms like sorghum headworm or fall armyworm, they can start feeding on some of those things when they get exposed. So it's one of those years that you have to be on the lookout. The other thing I'm concerned with, it just depends on how hot and how dry it actually gets, is, we're setting up for a good grasshopper year. We already got a lot of grasshoppers out there. So if it stays hot and dry and those humidities start dying down, that's when we'll have to start looking out for grasshoppers. And because we don't have a whole lot of vegetative matter out there, getting those grasshoppers early whenever they're just now hatching and going out and spraying them are going to be critical, especially in areas that are planted late or just don't have a whole lot of biomass to them.
Are you seeing very much grackle pressure throughout the state?
Just in Walmart parking lots, but it's pretty severe at that point in time. No, we've had some calls. Actually, I mean, you say that, but we've had some calls of some bird damage on some planted. Once again, because there's just not a whole lot for them out there in some of these areas. So we've heard some indications of some bird damage on some recently planted crops, and the hog damage is always there. Brian had some hog and deer damage on some of his wheat. So
by the way, we've got hogs in the sorghum at Perkins. We
Oh,
got
boy.
3 hog wallows up there.
Freaking hogs.
Well, and not to endorse one brand of variety, but it is showing up certain pressure in certain varieties too.
Yeah, so what we saw was our in our variety by nitrogen management, it was the OK Corral, which is a beardless variety, and so At 2 of our 3 locations, the deer basically took us from 50 to 10 bushel. And a couple of the plots, the hogs got in along with deer at one location because you could see how they eat. You actually can see what is a hog and what's deer by the way that head's taken off.
That means you've had too much pressure over the years. If you know which one's which,
there's truth there. Well, in the same plots, it was odd. So just next to the lake where we had the hog and the deer damage, we had some Gallagher and some greenhammer side by side in a nitrogen response study, and in anything that had early nitrogen on greenhammer that created a more lush and more green, the deer just demolished it. Every single plot was just, and this is at jointing, right? This is not heading. This is at jointing when it's like right when you probably shouldn't be grazing it anymore.
Yeah.
They just kept it mowed. Gallagher they didn't touch. I mean, 20 foot away, well-fertilized Gallagher plot was untouched, but the greenhammer was just leveled. And so my deer stand's going to have a combo of OK Corral and greenhammer when it comes up.
Yeah.
But the other thing, we got calls a couple of weeks ago, several weeks ago, I guess now, is looking at cutworms. We might have some cutworm damage and stuff like that. End up a lot of that I think ended up being wind. It's one of those things that we're going back to that wind scenario. We're having such particulate matter in the wind and such high winds that are consistent that they're just sawing off, young corn and sorghum seedlings kind of right there at the ground level, starting to pick off soybean trifoliates, stuff like that. So, I mean, it's, going back to the thing of the weather, environmental conditions versus biological stress, that wind can play a lot of tricks on kind of what some damage is. And we've even seen some sorghum looked like some herbicide damage that I think we ended up denoting that it was due to excessive moisture paired with wind. So it's one of those things that it's been kind of a tricky summer crop year kind of starting off. So, but it's one of those things to keep an eye out for.
Let me ask a question that we've covered before on this, and it deals with cover crops. Is this are there benefits to a cover crop this year where we are with the moisture, with the heat, or they're not?
Well, I mean, like with the wind,
right.
I mean, it is brutal.
Oh, yeah.
And then if you've got a low residue system like cotton or soybeans, and you're trying to grow cotton, I mean, this is a year where, I mean, despite the moisture use, it's going to lift the wind, and it's going to protect those plants. And with the rains we've got, if you had a lot of winter cover crops out there, it would have recharged a lot of that and would have helped it get in the ground better. So I mean, it's one of them years where it may have been a pretty beneficial thing for some growers depending on the situation, I would think. What do you think, Josh?
Well, I mean, it just the same thing I ask everybody whenever they're talking about growing cover crops is like, what's your point? Like what's your goal for those? And if you're talking about, hey, I got wheat out of the ground, I don't want to go into a summer crop because I'm a little cautious on it. Wheat prices look good still, so I'm going to maybe want to go into wheat next fall. Yeah, I mean, if you can get some nice, I don't want to say cheap cover crop seed, but not overly expensive cover crop seed to put some residue back in the ground, and maybe you want to graze it for a month or so, because hay's going to be short, and our native pastures might be a little weaker this year because, kind of like what we talked with Laura when our critical growth period, some of our areas were a little dry. So if you want to throw in a cover crop, I think it's a good year too. Our cover crops look great this year because certain components have gone and died out because they wanted to grow real fast when we didn't have a whole lot of moisture, but the other components just wanted to sit there. And, our sorghum based cover crop systems that have millets or sorghum sudan or BMR sorghum or something like that have looked great, and they've gotten a ton of biomass to them. So if a grower wanted to have a good hay but have some good residue and maybe go into some no-till wheat, I think it's a good year, especially if you're a little hesitant to pull out all the stops for a high input summer crop, because it's one of those things. I'm always very pro summer crop, but again, the inputs are what they are, and I don't think you can short inputs. So, if you didn't want to spend the price on the seed and the herbicide and stuff like that, then maybe cover crops aren't the worst thing in the world this year. And I think they could have some great value, especially if that wind keeps blowing. I think even in some of our high residue systems, we've seen even our high residue systems where all the residue gets caught up against a snow fence or a fence or a tree line whenever the wind is unrelentless. And our cover crops have the benefit of not having that. So there's some benefit there. I would always say just kind of make sure that you're going to be able to realize your goal. And that you're not overpricing yourself, because again, if we don't get a whole lot of rain in the next 4 or 5 weeks as you're prepping for wheat next year, you're not going to get a whole lot of growth. So, if you just want a little bit of residue, that's fine. I think you'll get it. If you want to be like heavily grazed, but you're going to kill it to go into a early October wheat, I don't know if you're going to be able to realize that goal if it doesn't rain in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So, it's one of those things. Make sure that you're actively being able to achieve the goals you're set forth. In the next several weeks, for most of our summer crops, especially the ones that were planted earlier, I think, as I said, the 21st is usually that corner when we turn and we go reproductive.
Yep.
And so from a physiological standpoint, the question is it going to continue to be 100 degrees for the next 3 or 4 weeks, or are we going to get a break off and it's going to, in a week's time, it's going to cool down and we'll be in the low 90s with some 70s and 60s and stuff like that, and maybe we'll get a shower here, maybe we won't.
I hope those guys down at OU are wrong.
Well, unfortunately, sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't. So, but if we don't get a whole lot of moisture, I expect things to progress slow, and especially if we're 100 degrees outside. Me and Jason have observed several times that milo itself will just kind of sit there for long periods of time if it doesn't have good moisture. The thing of it is that it's got good moisture. It's got good moisture underneath. It's going to eventually need that above ground moisture that once again that humidity and dew points to stay maintained in the canopy to keep it from stressing too hard. Yeah. From an insect standpoint, from a disease standpoint, I don't know. Like I said, there's things out there. I think grasshoppers are one to keep an eye on, especially if it dries up on us too much. Stink bugs, I think, are always going to be an issue in soybeans. Worms are always going to be an issue in milo. So it's just something to keep an eye on, because if you already are stressed, it's one thing you just don't want to keep going stressed a little bit further. Kind of like what we talked about earlier, I am very interested on how much nitrogen stress comes out in the next several weeks. Some of our summer crops that were either fertilized heavily up front or are relying on that wheat fertilizer to get them through at least the first part, and seeing how much side dress goes on some things.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot. I mean, the deal was it's not even wait and see. It was that when a lot of that crop went in the ground, there was no moisture.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't a whole lot of hope on putting inputs in until there was moisture. And so that's why Susan got. I'd say also, at least from the soil fertility specialist perspective, keep an eye on the weeds, because we need to be hitting them now, because if we're going to be dry for 4 weeks, they're going to harden off quick, and we're not going to kill much in another couple of weeks if we don't have moisture. So be pretty vigilant right now and paying attention to what weeds are out there, and try to keep it as clean as possible, so that, like, if it doesn't rain for 4 weeks and you don't take care of the pigweed that's up there right now, you're not taking care of it, or mares, so you're not taking care of it at any time in the future.
Well, I just had a guy on my soil probe guy call me, so we're going to be putting the soil moisture probes out in the Panhandle. Got to get up with some guys down in Altus to put some out in some pivots, and I need to get down there, because seems like the cotton's kind of delayed, but I mean, my perspective's a little skewed because we're trying to plant it as early as possible, and I think they were delayed. But like Josh said, these summer crops, the ones I see where we've had rain, we got good deep profiles. I mean, they look good. Yep. And my perspective is if we've got moisture through reproductive growth, we can make grain. But corn, head high corn, uses anywhere from a quarter to a half inch of water a day. Unstressed corn, that's corn that's got a good profile under it, and so good silt loam's got 2 inches of water per foot, and it don't last very long when it's 100 degrees, because the half inch per day is when it's 100 degrees, and then as it runs out of moisture, that number goes down until there's no moisture left, and then it dies, right? and so we have some pretty good setups, but like Josh says, if it stays hot and we've got big canopies, it gets a little sketchy. But I mean, we're set up, and not everywhere, but yeah, it's just I don't know. It's this whole year is just exhausting.
If we continue the way that we are right now, and it's hot, and it's dry, and it's windy, but we got good moisture underneath us, it's going to be a race. And unfortunately,
these crops are growing.
There's some crops that do well in a race, and then there's some crops that don't do well in a race. Some crops need time to vegetatively grow and sit there and do all those kind of things. Soybean, I think, is one of those that doesn't do well in a race. It needs time to let that indeterminate nature kind of come through. It needs time to set flowers. It needs time to fill pods and stuff like that. Where corn, I think, is one that does heck of a good in a race. It'll race with the best of them. So if we turn into a race, I think our corn, especially our early corn that looks good, I think we'll do fine as long as we get good pollination. I think some of our broadleaf summer crops are the ones that don't do well in races, and I think those are the ones that will hurt if this summer turns into a race of, are we going to finish the crop before we run out of moisture?
And on your milo, you have milo down south. When that was planted in April?
No, that didn't have any moisture.
Like, what was your earliest planted milo?
Perkins over here was planted last week in April, and
what
that's
growth stage is it? Is it in the boot?
It's not quite there, but it's about midway up the stalk. Yeah. It's about 2 foot tall and canopied over, and the head's about midway up. So it's going, and it's, we put out Husky for some weeds 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, something like that, and that stuff was just now 12 inches, and now it's big and it's going. So it's rocking and rolling pretty fast. So the big thing is can it maintain this for this long? So and if it can, I think we'll have really good crops. If not, we're going to need some help from Mother Nature. It's not to say that any of these crops are going to do bad. We just might need help from Mother Nature come late July, 1st of August.
Well, and you never know. Like, freaking when we started this podcast, we're like, it's not raining. It's not raining. And then we got 20 damn inches in some places. I mean,
now we're talking about it not raining.
I know. I don't even know what we're doing here. I mean,
well, that's the funny thing. My wife told my little one, said that I'm sitting there and I'm checking the weather. When it was raining real heavy, I'm checking the weather and stuff like that. My little one says, "What are you doing?" And my wife goes, "Don't worry. You married a quasi farmer. It's either too wet, too dry. We need rain. We don't need rain, or something's always wrong with the weather." So,
but that's where we live, man.
No, I was like that in Louisiana too. It's the same thing. That's just the profession we're in. It's the weather is always something to be desired. So
when I first started, we had an agronomist. I won't name his name.
Those are always the best. I'm
he's
not going
gonna
to name
say-
his name.
he would talk about like planting dates, and you
Oh,
want
I
to
already
plant
know who you're
this
talking
the
about.
early, April, and then you want to avoid May, and then you can start planting again in June. And then he would, use words like the average and all this stuff. It's like, shit, they ain't no average. And I mean, those guys at OU, we've worked with them, right? And they're great. There's some really good guys down there, and they've got a hell of a job. And they can kind of tell you what's going on. In fact, we just put a letter of intent for a proposal to try to get more of what they do out into agriculture.
Oh, wow.
Or I didn't write it. He put me on it. But, I mean, it's brutal to figure out what the weather's going to do. Because in
And
3 weeks it could cool down to 90 degrees and start sprinkling.
Well, I don't think
And
2 weeks ago we would have thought we were going through this. I mean, it was low 80s. We were going down in the 50s and the
Right.
40s.
right.
I
Yeah.
don't think 2 weeks later we would have thought that we were talking about 100-degree plus weather with heat indices in the 120s.
Yeah.
I don't think we would have been talking about that.
A guy, and I've had, like Gary McManus down there, and then there's some others that he's a state climatologist,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And he's really good, but I have him talk every once in a while about long range forecasts, but I wonder if it would be interesting to talk to him about what is going on, like why does everything seem so crazy? You know what I mean? And I guess it's just the way it is here, but I mean, I just know that those guys have done a lot of good work to figure out like get better and better with that 30-day forecast. But this year, it just seems crazy.
And just to clarify, whenever you say down at OU, it is the guys and gals at the Mesonet, and then also the National Weather Service
Yeah,
Storm
that's what
Prediction
I'm talking
Center.
about.
Yep.
It's part of the National Weather Center down there,
Yeah.
or what we call the OSU embassy, because there's like one
Yeah, we
OSU
have
person
one
back
guy.
there.
Does Wes,
Hang in there, Wes.
Does Wes Leslie have an office that's like Al Sutherland's office?
Yeah, well,
where it's just
yeah.
blazing orange and
Yeah, I think
black?
it is. Yeah, yeah. But it is. I mean, and like you say, those folks down there, the Mesonet. For those that don't know, they have 120 data points across the state, and they measure all of these different measurements, both in the air and then soil, and then it reports back to the Mesonet office, which is in Norman at the National Weather Center. But then the National Weather Service does the predicting of storms, and then and they all work together along with the OU, is it School of Meteorology, College of Meteorology? But all of those are housed in that same building, and it's difficult to not only predict but interpret all of the information coming across the state, and they do it that quick, and they make the forecasts, and
Well, and
I'm glad
they
you
provide
clarified all that, because I was just calling the guys at OU.
right.
For the
Well, they-
listeners, that I appreciate that, because I don't do it out of disrespect.
Right.
because
Yeah.
they're
Well,
really
and that's the one thing I bring to the conversation here. I can't talk plants, but I've worked with the Mesonet enough to be able to.
Well, they bring good bits of information, because like we talked about today, it's not just temperature, it's
Right.
not just rainfall, it's
Solar
wind,
units.
it's heat units, it's dew points, it's humidity, and whether we're talking about cattle comforts or we're talking about inversions, or we're talking
Right.
about canopy humidity. I mean, it's all important to
Right.
all of our growers, because we're
ticker. I mean,
Yeah.
the Mesonet
Yeah.
ticker might be the best of all.
Well, what's
It's true.
crazy to me is, like, I'll mention them and a lot of people I work with know about it, but
Yeah.
there's some that still don't know. It's like, dude, there's a freaking Mesonet
Yeah.
that I have checked 1,000 times a day.
Right.
And you can look at the like estimated pan evaporation, which tells you, kind of a rough idea of how much water your crop is using. It tells
Right.
you how much rain.
Right.
I mean, like the humidity. I mean, it's unreal.
Wow.
And we are the only state in America that has anything close to it. Kansas has something that's been there for a few years, and it's pretty. Kansas, I'd say, there's this,
They're growing.
They're growing.
They're growing.
But it's nothing.
We're established.
Yeah.
Well, and to
We're the
keep
OG.
this Mesonet commercial going, last week I burned 8 8 burn cedar piles out at the farm, and I was able to develop a forecast on there to see what the weather is going to be, and I had 84-hour window that I could burn, and I'm glad that we did, because the wind switched at the end of that forecast period, and we were able to successfully burn all of our cedars because of that tool with the mesonet. So
did you do a burn management plan, Dave? Did you hand that in?
It's still on the computer, but it's it was printed. Oh, no, it was downloaded in time.
It was approved by John Wears.
Yeah.
It's funny. Dave's kind of one of he's like the pinnacle of an extension clientele. He's like, oh yeah, I use this product.
Well,
best.
Well, it really and I worked for Extension for years, and it was cool because I got to learn about all of the actual tools that are available to John Q. Public, and while I haven't bugged Chad Webb over in Noble County a lot yet, I'm going to, and poor Chad is going to be like, Dave, no, really. No,
You're going to get your tax money out of Chad.
By golly, I am. Yeah.
I had a phone call from an individual down in Oklahoma City that manages some parks and stuff, and he's like, oh yeah, I really appreciate you calling me back, and I'm like, well, that's why you pay taxes.
Oh, go ahead.
I need to do one plug before we wrap this thing up. So
Yeah.
I've got 2 projects going on. One, so this is just putting out there on the radio waves, is that in soybeans, the Oklahoma Soybean Board is supporting some research of mine. I am looking. Oklahoma Soybean Checkoff. Sorry, the soybean checkoff. I get names bad. No, I'm flustered. Thanks, Josh. Crap. All right, so supporting some work looking at potassium, but I'm looking for fields that are yellowing and show potassium deficiencies. If you have any signs or even curious you might have potassium deficiencies, let me know. I would love to come out and put some small plots out on your soybeans and come back in with a combine and take readings. So we're going to look at method, source, and timings of different things, and can we catch up when that potassium deficiency develops in season.
Anybody else?
Is that your plug?
That's my plug. I'm done.
We are also looking for fields that have historically had soybeans in it, so we can get some native inoculum data. So if anybody wants to see how much native inoculum they have in their soils, then let us know, because we need to come and get about a 5-gallon bucket worth of soil, and we can run that test. Also funded by the Oklahoma Soybean Checkoff.
Jason, do you have anything with soybeans or the Oklahoma Soybean Checkoff?
No. I get a little money. I get some money from the Cotton Incorporated, and then all my money's federal money, I guess.
But no research you need to talk about or plug.
Oh, I don't know. I've got one student that, as we get done with harvest, that she needs to find a couple more fields where we have long-term, 5-10 year yield maps, and we'd like to get those yield maps and then identify locations with where we can look at the variability in that yield, and then take soil samples down to 4 feet. And she'll describe that soil by horizon, and then we'll look at the surface soil health parameters like aggregate stability and things like that, and see how all that relates to those yield maps. And we've got a few fields in northern Oklahoma, and I've got some old data from out in Miami. And once I can get everything situated, July is always the time where we take soil samples, because everything's kind of settled in.
It's nice and cool.
If anybody's interested, and it's cool because you can start to understand what's causing that variability. So much of everyone talks about fertility and this and that and how it affects, but it's the soil. In Oklahoma, it is the soil and or landscape position, which is part of the soil character, that affects the yield. And so she's just doing some work. That's what all these soil samples a lot around here are, is just trying to understand how those, like a higher resolution of how profile characteristics influence yield and soil health parameters.
Thank you for listening in on this conversation of the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. And if you would like to join the next conversation, send us an email, podcast@reddirtagronomy.com, or send us a tweet. Our handle is reddirtag. To find out more about the resources we talked about on today's podcast, visit reddirtagronomy.com. There you will find show notes and you can listen to past episodes too. For Dr. Jason Warren, Dr. Josh Lofton, and Dr. Brian Arnell, I'm Dave Deacon, and we want to thank you for listening. The proceeding is a copyrighted recording of Ag Now Media, LLC, 2022. And yes, all rights are reserved.